Welcome to the Make Love Yours podcast. It is bloody fantastic to have you here. If you're watching on the YouTube, it's great to see you as well. Today I've got a very special guest with me. This is Dr. Kirk Honda, and you might know him from Psychology in Seattle. It's a YouTube channel that is absolutely booming, especially with Dr. Kirk's reviews of 90 Day Fiancé. There's some pretty cringe moments in some of those reviews, but it's very entertaining. Dr. Kirk, it is fantastic, mate, to have you on the podcast with me and on the YouTube.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Mate, I got to ask, tell me this. You're a university professor, you're one of the top in your field. Before we get into the questions today, talking all about attachment styles and how to form closer bonds in deep relationship, what made you decide to go, I've got this great college career, I'm teaching, I'm working with clients. Do you know what I should do as well? A YouTube channel where I do reviews and teach. How did that come about, man?
Well, it's a long story, but in short, I was obsessed with podcasts. It was the late 2000s, about 2006, 2007, and there weren't that many podcasts out there, but I loved podcasts. I listened to them all the time. I like audiobooks. Yeah, and there were 3 psychology podcasts at the time. And I thought, if I make the worst psychology podcast in the world, I will have the 4th best podcast
best in the world
in psychology. And I thought, that's not so bad. So I decided to start a podcast. And then as I was making audio episodes, I just said, people were like, you got to put it on YouTube. And I was just like, really? Who wants it on YouTube? And so I started posting on YouTube. And then during the pandemic, me and my wife were like, what do we do with our time? And I was like, well, maybe we can get into reality television. We never watched that. And so we started watching Love is Blind. And then I thought, there's this thing called like reaction videos on YouTube. Maybe I'll try it. And, I thought I'd get, a couple hundred views. That's usually what I'd get. And it took off to the point where the cast members started to contact me. And then I was like, oh my God, what did I say about them?
Yeah. Cool, man. Let's get into some questions about attachment from the amazing community. Yeah. I've got some beautiful community members who have left some questions for you, all about attachment styles, different elements. So you ready to go?
Yep.
All right. We got a question from Denet. And Denet writes in, how can I hold space for a man who has a dismissive, avoidant attachment style? Now, we might even need to talk a little bit about what that is. How can I hold space for a man with this attachment style that allows him to feel safe and open up, express his feelings, and also to be receptive to hearing my feelings without dismissing them?
Yeah. So in brief, dismissive avoidant attachment style is when we're young and we're not given enough attunement, meaning that our caregivers don't notice us enough or don't respond to us in a healthy way that makes us feel safe and heard and understood and paid attention to. Then we have a number of different coping styles available to us, one of which is called dismissive avoidant. Essentially, a child 2-3 years old decides, I can't really depend on other people, and so I'm just going to avoid relationships, and I'm going to avoid my own emotions as well, because if I avoid people but pay attention to my emotions, I'm going to notice how neglected I am. And so you both avoid other people and you avoid your own emotions, and you have this conscious narrative in your mind that you don't have emotions. A lot of people like this will think that they're robots, or that, they just don't need people. They're very independent. These people can be, fiercely independent people. Yep. Like when they move, they don't ask their friends to help them move. They just do it themselves. And I'm on the spectrum of avoidant, and so that's me.
Yeah, I lean avoidant as well with my attachment style.
Yeah. I mean, I literally moved completely by myself one time in my Honda Civic. I packed everything myself, in 35 trips across town. And anyway, and not because I didn't think other people would care, but I'm just like, well, why bother?
I can do it.
Yeah.
I don't need it. Why ask?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I suffer because certainly other people would have been happy to help me, and I certainly help other people when they ask. Anyway, the point is that we develop that in life, and we will think we don't have feelings, but we definitely do. And so what your question is, how do you hold space for a man that allows him to feel safe to open up? Well, the things that I tell people is, one, you have to see it accurately, because it's going to be very hurtful as he moves away from you, because that's his default, not only his default setting, just moving through his day, just to be very distant and non-dependent on you. Like when he has an emotional experience, he's not likely to reach out to you because he learned when he was 2 or 3 years old that why alert someone else to your...
People won't meet that need or not be there.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, not only why, but also if I do, I'm going to get neglected and then I'm going to hurt. So it's just better just to, be over here and I'll just deal with things on my own. So to the partner of people like that, it can feel very hurtful. It can feel like they don't care. They might feel like they're always sharing with other people and not you. But if you see it accurately, it helps to interpret it in a way that is less hurtful and provokes more, compassion from you for him. If you just imagine him as a 2-year-old being neglected or abused in some way, and he carries that with him, then that sort of helps to know what to do. The second thing is when he is vulnerable, is to really capitalize on that. It's the key to avoidant people is vulnerability, which is and I work with a lot of clients on this, very scary for avoidant people to be vulnerable, like truly vulnerable, like falling apart where they're out of control.
Letting themselves be held. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Held emotionally or physically, and just be like flopping in someone's arm because again, when they were 2 or 3, they couldn't do that enough anyway. And so when he is even slightly vulnerable, like he's watching a sports game or something and he expresses his displeasure or something, that's emotional expression. And so you want to be attuned to that. And it's hard to know exactly what to do in a situation like that, but just in a way that makes him feel safe and heard and understood. And the third thing is to be, when you have your own feelings, because typically what happens is when you're matched up with an avoidant person, you end up chasing them all the time and they end up hurting your feelings because they're always distancing. And so what can sometimes happen is there's a lot of like yelling from this person to this person of just like, you're always withdrawing. You're never available. Like you're
Pay attention.
Yeah. Pay attention to me. Text me back, ask me how I'm doing. What's wrong with you? Just anger. Now that comes from a rational place, a normal, healthy place of just like neglect. You feel neglected. You feel the way he did when he was 2. That's some effect of this. And so those feelings of hurt and worry are totally normal, but the response of anger will very much trigger the avoidant response from the other person. And so if you can communicate in a way that's non-accusatory, in a way that's like, so I know that, well, what would be something I would say? I might say something like, so it's totally okay if you're not, if you want to just chill on your own right now, but just to let you know right now, I feel kind of lonely and you could make me really feel loved, or you could really soothe me by listening to me yammer at you for 10 minutes or so. I don't know. That's not a great role play, but just more ownership of your own feelings, non-accusatory, non-anger, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so you're not using that, you should do this, you need to spend more time with me. There's not that anger-driven language. It's very much making yourself vulnerable and kind of saying, hey, I'm feeling sad right now, or I'm feeling a bit scared that you don't like me, or I'm feeling scared in my body. It's up to you. It would mean a lot to me if we could have a hug right now. Or is that kind of what you're getting at? Exactly.
Cool. You're good at being vulnerable, Mark.
I've actually, as an avoidant, I can relate, and just certainly a leaning avoidant is something I've been working on. And, with my own partner, she's really given me the permission to kind of more and more just relax with her and just like trust her and know that she's not going to run away. And, she, like you were saying, has learned not to put her own narratives onto it because she leans a bit more anxious, as is common. So with her not putting narratives on it, she'll even joke, she'll even call it out if if we're talking long-term future and I get a bit distant, she'll be like, Mark, is this your avoidance coming through? And I'll be like, probably a little. And she'll have a laugh about it, but we'll have a laugh about it. But she'll call it out. And, the times where, where I'm either really scared of failing her, or there was one time we're in San Diego, actually, where I just got so sad and just let myself really be sad around her and let her hold me. That was a very bonding time, because it's not something that us avoidants allow ourselves to do very often. And so when that person doesn't judge, when they just hold space, they accept you, they're just cool with it, you know, just holding us there. That's very powerful, and that really stands out to me as a bonding moment for us and for me as an avoidant.
Yeah. Music to my ears, Mark. That's great. Yeah. And you identify one thing that I see a lot of clients do functionally, which is adopting the attachment language and just saying it in the moment, just being like, so, you know, like you said, your partner is just like, so is this an avoidant thing happening right now? And you're like, oh yeah, maybe it helps, you know, because it's non-accusatory, you know, it's non-judgmental. It acknowledges that it's normal. Everyone, you know, the stats will sometimes say like half to 60% of people are securely attached, meaning they're not avoidant, preoccupied, or disorganized. But everyone I don't know a single human being, client, personal, otherwise, who isn't leaning in some direction.
A little bit. Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that. I have one friend I can think of who might be super solid down the middle with his partner. They just seem so secure, but it's probably the only person I can think in my circle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I see the stats as well, 60 to 20% all secure. And I'm thinking, when I work with people, that's not what I'm seeing. And when I'm seeing relationships, there's always one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the categorizations are based on a particular categorization system that the threshold for insecure attachment styles is pretty high. Whereas most of us can recognize in relationships will have tendencies to either avoid or you know, become preoccupied, anxious, or mixtures. You know, that's the other thing I always tell people is that it's context dependent. It's also dependent on your personality. Sometimes people think like I'm mostly avoidant, but sometimes I'm preoccupied. What's going on? And like I said earlier, when you're 2 or 3 years old, you develop a style of reacting to attachment insecurity. Sometimes it's going to be in one direction, sometimes it's going to be in the other, and sometimes it's going to be a mixture of both depending on the scenario.
The context and scenario. Yeah. Let's get on to Breanna's question. Breanna says, what's the best way to start a conversation? And how do we're getting into some dating stuff here, man. What's the best way to start a conversation, and how do I keep a conversation going while also giving him hints that I'm interested? I'm more of a listener, and I'm not so comfortable in social situations, but it's something I'm trying to work on. Want to have a go at this one?
Yeah. Well, what do you think? I mean, this is your department, right?
Yeah, I think for this one, starting, obviously the context matters. Like, are we starting online? Are we playing tennis together? Are we in a club? I think one of the best things, and one of the things that I just see, I know I respond to as a man and I see men respond to, is a woman's energy. And it's not so much about what you say, but when you're sharing passion, gratitude, enthusiasm, and you attach energy to that, you could be talking about cardboard boxes, and men will just melt. So I was chatting with a client yesterday, a young client, and she was saying, you know, one thing is I want more confidence to speak out. She's very young, so she's 22. She said, I want more confidence to speak up, to get over my social anxiety. And I can relate to social anxiety because at her age, I had exactly the same thing. And a big part of it is, yeah, as I say, attaching energy to what you say in enthusiasm. And because what she was saying yesterday was, she was saying, I was hanging out with a friend, a girlfriend in this case, but after about half the day, I felt that we kind of ran out of topics to talk about. And I was getting in my head, and I was just a bit feeling not that socially confident. And what I found really shifted for me is when I just started speaking more from my body and just started responding to the environment, responding to what I was feeling, speaking up, whether it was right or wrong. And yeah, you do say dumb things sometimes and people make fun of you, but just speaking up your truth and enthusiasm, eventually doing that enough, you just kind of get the resilience, which means you stop caring what people think of what you say. And from then on, you just kind of speak, you know, you just sort of shoot from the hip with your conversation. And my experience is when you've been doing that for a while, you never run out of things to say because you're responding, you're reacting. And especially as a woman, giving men your energy, that's been very powerful for my clients, at least, in helping them get good at conversation. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the clinical language or the therapy language that you're talking about is being in the here and now. One. Two, there's this thing called, you know, improv therapy, yes and one of the things with improv therapy you learn is to get away from the future and the past and just attend to what's happening right now. You know, someone's saying something and you're listening, but you're not, you know, because to do true good improv, you're not planning while the other person is saying anything. You're waiting, you're absorbing everything they're saying, and then you bounce off what they said, even in the last couple seconds of what they said, you know, and you're okay with making mistakes. You know, improv people have to be very accepting of the fact that they're going to screw up because it's a lot to think about. And same with conversations. And so improv or improv therapy can, one, just sort of get you into that mindset that you're identifying, and also just expose you to making mistakes, you know, because a big part of shyness is avoidance of making social mistakes. Socializing is rampant with social mistakes. It's just like it happens.
Oh, yes.
On a constant basis, especially if you're really looking at all the things you might be able to scrutinize. And particularly if you're shy and you're not very practiced and you might be a little awkward or something. And the thing is like just accepting I'm going to make mistakes and that's okay. And it's not the end of the world. And, oh, I just made 5 social mistakes and no one has abandoned me yet. I'm still talking to this person. So a lot of it has to do with repetitions. You know, I talk about like when someone's running a marathon or they're worried about running a marathon, they don't say like, well, I'm just going to sit in my house and like hope that I can cope with running a marathon. You know, you got to get out there and run. Like you got to do it. You know what I mean? What would you say to someone that's just like, okay, that all sounds fine and good, but I'm having trouble just doing the first step. You know, like,
yeah, I guess it depends where you're at. And if you're asking in a dating or a friend's context, I mean, you might have a lot of friends, but you say, I'm not really talking to any men or any women. I want to do a bit of dating, which honestly, I'm working with a lot of clients online. And unfortunately, most of the world has gone online in the past 6 months. And yeah, you've got to adapt a little bit. It's a slightly different model, but the same concepts apply. If you share your energy, because most people, even if you're an introvert like I am, if you go to a bar, you know, for the night, you step out for half an hour, you're going to get yourself in a good energy. You sort of psych yourself up a bit. You say, all right, I'm going to talk to some people tonight. You know, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to make some conversation. Even as introverts, we've got to kind of psych ourselves up. If you're a natural extrovert, you don't go to the bar in a mopey ass state. You don't go there and just go, I'm just going to mope here. If you do that, you just stay home. But it's amazing how many of us log in online in a mopey ass state and then wonder why people don't respond to us. So same sort of mindset. If you're going to jump online, if you want to meet men for dating, same thing, get online, share a couple of texts, really share a great energy. And then with my clients, we work to get them to the phone very quickly. Like within 4 to 12 exchanges, they're getting to the phone calls. Online is a meeting service. It's fantastic for meeting. It is useless for dating. We just use it for what it is. It's a meeting service. And the people that want to step up and really date, they're not going to have a problem calling. They want to talk to real people. It's the 90% of people who are just like, oh, I'm kind of bored and maybe I just want a pen pal, or maybe I just want sex. Like they will sit there texting you, but that's okay because you just filter them out and you've got 10 times as many people to meet. So the numbers make up for it. So that would be more dating. If you're more like, Mark, I just want to get out, like I just want a friend or I just want to connect in some way, then I'd be resourceful with it, because whether there's a little hobby, whether, you know, obviously depending where you're locked down, there's Bumble BFF, there's meetup groups that are still happening depending on your city and how it's working. At a basic social level, if you can, rather than dating, if you can find some sort of activity you want to do, that's always a bit smoother because you've got a third thing to focus on. If you and I are playing ping pong together, we can have fun over the ping pong game, and we've got this kind of nice thing for us to be friends over. And that third thing that you want to be there not only gives you good energy, but it takes away from any social awkwardness of like, oh, I have to find something else to talk about because we can play Uno.
Yeah. I mean, I'm even that way with my friends. It's not often that me and my friends just sit and stare at each other.
Something.
Yeah. It's like play a video game or get outside or do something.
Yeah. Have that activity. And that's even a great thing on dates. You know, I would never do a sitting date. I would always at least do a walking date because I want to be stimulated. I want movement on my dates. I want, you know, I'd encourage the same for clients as well, is having a third thing that just allows flow, just totally makes it non-interview and takes the pressure off.
Yeah, I like it.
Let's go on to Anna's question. Anna says, here's a question for your consideration. Can someone with an anxious attachment style due to childhood trauma be attracted to and establish a lasting and stable romantic bond or connection with a partner before or unless the anxious attachment style person has processed, integrated, and healed all of their trauma? Yes.
Yeah, research shows this. We've looked into this a lot. We've established attachment styles for decades, and we've been researching it for decades. And data shows that people with insecure attachment styles, even disorganized, which can be, really difficult, can have fulfilling relationships. We have to define what that exactly means, but all the things that you think about: relationship satisfaction, long lasting, enhancing your life, this kind of thing. The difference between really anyone, and data shows that securely attached people who have no traumas in their past can also have difficult relationships. So they're associated, the more secure you are, the more likely you are to be attracted to the right people and to be in a long lasting, satisfactory relationship. But the difference is that the research shows, and definitely in my opinion and my observation, is that personal awareness. So how aware are you of your psychology in general, but also your attachment triggers and your attachment needs? How good are you at emotional regulation? That's a big one. Do you have ownership of your feelings? We talked about that earlier. Instead of saying, "You never text me," owning your feelings of, right now I feel neglected. You're not neglecting me really, but because of me, I just feel neglected. It might have to do with you. It might have to do with me or my mood. I don't know. Owning my feelings. I'm not jumping to an accusation to someone. Constructive communication techniques, John Gottman, if you read his books, and I talk about that sometimes.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing books.
Oh, okay, good. And he's from Seattle too, by the way.
Yeah, I'd love to get up there and actually interview him. He was one of the people on my top list.
Yeah.
That we'd love to get in.
Yeah, you'd probably be able to get him. I mean, he's sort of slowing down lately because he's, I think, on the retiring end of things. And then of course, ongoing healing. You don't get an anxious attachment style for no reason. There are usually abuse, at the very least, neglect of some kind, and healing from that relational trauma, meaning you having corrective experiences where you begin to believe that you're lovable, because that's when you're anxious attachment style. Usually when you're growing up, you're being taught you're not lovable and that other people are great and have all the things and you have nothing and you need them for everything. And there's nothing wrong with depending and wanting to be with other people, but there is something destructive about believing that you don't matter and that you're not worth it or something. And so, that also can help. But people will do a lot of healing on this, but they'll still retain their anxious attachment style because it's just really hard to shed those defenses when you're caught in a situation that is triggering you.
And so how much of this healing, I'm always curious about this, can you do as an individual to handle this? And then how much really is the rubber has to hit the road when you're in a romantic situation? Because it's not, you can be single and handle some of this stuff, but how much of it do you really need? Like, I need to be in the situation to actually really practice and handle this?
Yeah, it's a good question. Hard to codify exactly, but I leaned more towards other people. And as, people, we tend to want to say, well, you need to be able to do it on your own. You shouldn't depend on others. We are social creatures. It's very clear. Look at our, primate cousins. They don't spend time by themselves. They're not snakes.
We're not tigers. Hang out on their own all the time.
Yeah, they're constantly touching and grooming and checking in and doing calls and, oh, what's going on with Joe over there, And so to act like we can do things on our own is anti-human. But so I lean more towards, healing in relationships. If relationships damaged you, then relationships are going to heal you. There are things you can do on your own for sure, but it's so much faster. And that's why therapy works, because you're having a corrective emotional experience with a therapist. We call it earned security, but you can certainly have that in other relationships. It just has to be a secure, intense relationship that teaches you the lesson, unteaches you the lessons that you learned when you were young. You know, like, I don't matter. Well, you could tell yourself all day long, I matter, I matter. And that's good. You should do that. But there's, you know, nothing faster to unlearn that bad lesson than if actually someone shows you that you matter. And then you're like, oh, wow, not only am I telling myself I matter, but this person seems to treat me like I matter. And that will rewrite your narrative. That will help you to heal, my word, from anxious attachment.
Yeah, so I have a friend that talks about inside out, but also outside in. So it sounds like what you're saying, you can say I matter, and it's great to do that. In fact, important to really do that and have it inside and flow outside. Because obviously if your belief is constantly I don't matter, you may well attract a relationship that reflects that. But at the same time, you need that feedback from outside to come in to kind of complete the loop and fully heal, is what I'm hearing there.
Yeah, I mean, I usually say it's 2 stages, and this is a distillation of several theories, but in the short term, you do inside out, because that's the fastest thing you can do. You can just be like, okay, I'm going to combat.
Instantly, you can take action right away.
In your head, just like, I have this notion that I'm mad, but I'm going to say, no. Well, all of us know that only goes so far. You know, it's just like, you can argue with yourself all day long. It doesn't take away that impulse that's like, you don't matter. But you can at least not let this run the show, you know, drive the bus, as I sometimes say. But then long term, it has to come from outside in, because there's only so much you can do to convince yourself. So to heal this bad energy, if you will, life has to teach you that this energy doesn't.
This energy is okay. Yeah, and even actioning on it yourself, I'm sure if someone draws a line in the sand and they say, maybe I'm going to get out of this relationship I've been in for years where I felt like I don't matter, or maybe they just even prioritize themselves in some way. They say, do you know what? I do matter, so I'm going to stop work at 6 and get a good night's sleep. Just even little things like that could feed back in as well to the I matter message, right? Because you're disciplining.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of like relationship with yourself. And so in a sense, you can heal that way. I don't think it goes very fast, but you're essentially saying, I matter to me. And so that helps you to feel like, well, someone thinks I matter. I think I matter. I'm someone.
Yeah. You're like practicing validation of yourself and that what your wants and needs matter. Yeah. Just a couple of things you said before. A quick shout out. John Gottman's book. I think everyone should buy it, which is the 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. I wanted to make a mention of that book because if you haven't got it, go and grab it. My partner and I use the love map thing about once a month. It's a great exercise, really, really great exercise. And videos this month as well are sponsored actually by BetterHelp. So Dr. Kirk was talking about therapy before. So if you do need help, we've got the best and biggest licensed counseling service, over 11,000 counselors. And if you can't get out of the house during COVID, reach out for help if you need it. If you're in Seattle, maybe go to Dr. Kirk instead or what he does. But if you're not and you need some remote help, BetterHelp will be there for you. So I'll put the link in the description. Let's go to Simpson's question. Simpson Samantha says, is it possible to love someone without being attached to them, i.e. not having expectations or having projections? Well, I'm interested to see how Kirk tackles this one. Is it possible to love someone without being attached to them, no expectations or projections?
Yeah, of course you can love someone. There are people in my life that I love whom I'm not attached to. Like, I don't need to see them all the time. And if I don't see them for a year, even, I'm not like sad about it. But when I see them, I very much do love them. Or I could love a distant person in my life, or I could love like a celebrity and they might not even know me. So
no expectations.
So, love can describe a lot of things, but I wonder this question, if it means like my partner whom I love, is it possible to love him but not be attached to him? Do you think that's what they're saying?
I think that could be what they are saying. Yeah. In a romantic sense, can I have love without being attached?
Yeah, and we have to define love. We have to define attached. But if I was to use my definitions, when we're attached to someone, we have the biological evolved process of a need. We've evolved a need for water and food and sleep and shelter and safety and attachment. It's exactly the same biological drive, and we will not thrive. A lot of bad things happen when we don't drink water, and a lot of bad things happen when we don't have secure attachments in our life. Depression, anxiety, suicidality, violence, anger, sleep problems, all sorts. The research shows whole
They're your
wide
needs.
variety. Yeah.
Yeah.
Infants will literally die if they don't have
Touch, right?
Yeah.
Touch and,
when
love.
Right. Is it possible to love your partner and not be attached to them? Sure. But I hope for Samantha that she has some secure attachments in her life. Doesn't have to be your partner. You could love that person and be like, yeah, take him or leave him. But my other people, I definitely need, my best friend and my sister and my parents, I worry that this question comes from a place of like, I don't feel like I'm attached to anybody, or I don't need attachment to anybody, which of course be potential. I mean, there's rare conditions where that's possible, but that decries a potential avoidant attachment approach to life,
Yeah, I agree. The context of this question feels a bit like, oh, can I just sort of accept crumbs almost? Is what I'm hearing. Like, that's what I hear. Like, is it possible to just love and not be attached and not ask for my needs, kind of just take what comes? So I sense that there could be a possible lack of boundaries if this is in a romantic context.
Right.
But I also agree. I think you've got to define love. And that's a really interesting question, actually. How do you, as a psychologist who works in this area, how do you define love?
Love is the feeling that we have that motivates us to get our needs met. When we have a need for love, a need for secure attachment, we could expand that to love in general. Like I said, we have a need for food and safety and water. We have a need for attachment. And the love is that feeling that's just like, oh, I feel this upwelling of this feeling, and it makes me want to express it or to bond with that person, or when I see that person, I adore them, like I like the way she looks and the way she talks and the way she moves, and oh, this thing happened to me and I can't wait to tell her. That is my pithy answer of love. What's your definition of love, Mark?
Yeah, this is something I've also been thinking about, and this might be completely oversimplifying, but one definition that's been sitting really well with me lately is that love is acceptance. And if we can talk in terms of self-love or other love, but starting with self-love, when we're able to truly accept the good, the bad, the ugly, the emotions, the parts of ourselves, accept ourselves exactly where we are, I perceive that as a very loving act for ourselves. Just true, I'm okay as I am. I totally accept myself. And what I also find is that clients and people who get in that state tend to attract their mirror. So the more self-accepting someone is, the better the connection between conscious and subconscious, the more they attract that in a partner, and thus the better relationships they seem to attract. And so when it comes to relationships, if my partner can tell me no, like, no, I don't want to do that, or this is my need, or she feels totally free to speak up, she doesn't feel she has to censor herself at all, and I truly accept that, like I accept her in the good, the bad, the same way I'm hopefully accepting myself. That to me has been a fruitful definition of love. It's a simple one, but it's been very powerful for me. And also seeing, there's also so many relationships out there where they feel good, they feel very attracted, but as soon as someone puts a boundary in place, or as soon as someone tells the other person no, I don't really accept you for that. I cause drama, or I rejecting type behavior. And so the most loving relationships that I see are the ones where the persons truly accept each other, warts and all, emotions, etc. And that's been a very helpful definition for me. Whether it's right or wrong, I have no idea, but that's really helped me.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, that's a very good angle to it, which is that I'm often talking about giving people the benefit of the doubt. They come home from work, they're in a bad mood. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You're just like, well, they're probably in a bad mood from work and it's not personal. if you don't give them the benefit of the doubt, then you're like, oh, they're always treating me like crap. And they're doing this on purpose because I didn't do this and that. They're getting revenge. Benefit of the doubt, acceptance of the other person, seeing the other person in a good light, having, good interpretations of the other person. Is that what you're talking about?
I think in that particular scenario, it would also be a case of I'd be encouraging the clients to speak up and figure it out, because maybe she will use a woman in this case. Maybe she really wants to feel more loved when he gets home, but maybe he feels a lot of pressure and just needs some transition time. So I would hope that the couple could talk together in that scenario, express how each other feels, and even going beyond benefit of the doubt, just hearing exactly what feelings are coming up for both people. And then hopefully working as a couple to find a solution that they both, again, fully accept. Hey, I accept that we're going to do one hug when we get home, and then I accept that I do one hug and then I get 30 minutes of me time. Whatever the couple figures out as a couple, that's going to be individual. But I guess speaking up and finding that place where here's a way to handle this with no resentment that we can both truly accept and therefore love. And if that's the case, if there's literally zero resentment and they both accept it, then I would see that as a loving act between the couple.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
Would you agree?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, the longer answer to what is love is, well, read every single poem and love song and and every rom-com and then you get your definition of love. It's so many things to so many people.
Yeah. Do you think that some of those rom-coms, it gets us too focused on the feeling, the obsession, the Helen Fisher dopamine hit, as opposed to kind of the accepting the I don't want to say uglier parts of love, but it kind of is. It's like accepting someone when they have a different opinion of you and still loving that. Like, do you think that society or rom-coms, et cetera, in general, focus too much on the feeling definition? If I'm obsessed or infatuated, I'm in love, versus the actual loving acts when we see a real secure couple?
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing you could say. I mean, more broadly, rom-com is, and just media in general, give people this massively distorted viewpoint of what a good relationship or the beginning of a relationship. And of course, they always focus on the beginning of a relationship when everything is
they do
infatuation and love and sex all the time, and new, and you don't have any resentments built up. And instead of the reality, which is long-term relationships, 99% of the relationships happen after the credits start rolling on a rom-com.
Yeah.
And that's
so
where
true.
Yeah, you start to not have that infatuation anymore. The honeymoon period is over. You start having fights that really feel bad. John Gottman points out that research shows that the fights that you have with your partners, most of them will go unresolved. And that's okay.
Yeah, it's like 60%, isn't it?
Right. So you really do read John Gottman.
I love John Gottman. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Probably him and Harville Hendrix would be probably my two favorite authors in the niche.
So the idea that we're supposed to, in the rom-coms, they always resolve their conflicts, but research shows that most people don't resolve most of their conflicts. The good relationships, talking about actual, good relationships.
Solid relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. And these rom-coms ruin it, right? Make us feel like we're all ashamed for our bad relationships. So many people come into my office, so many couples. And one of the biggest things that I train a lot of couples therapists too. And so what I'm always telling is, in the first session, find something or a multitude of things to compliment the couple on, and really, be sincere. Find those things in that couple that you can be like, you're doing this, you're doing that. That's a good sign. You're doing that. That's a good sign. Because so many couples are just like, we suck. We're terrible. Look at the neighbors next door and look at the rom-coms, and like, we're failing at this.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're normal. It's okay. It might not work out, but there's, it's normal to have days where it doesn't work out. It's normal to be disappointed. It's normal to sometimes not be attracted to your partner. Those are all, life is not to be a bummer, but life is suffering. All the philosophers and teachers will tell us that like to avoid suffering is to avoid life.
Is to suffer. Yeah. And I really like Mark Manson's quote on that, where he says, you either choose suffering or you get suffering. You either go to the gym and suffer, or you don't exercise and you suffer. Basically, you work on your relationships and suffer, or you be lonely and suffer. You're either going to get the default suffering by avoiding the present suffering, or you choose the present suffering. And it's not fun. I was talking to a couple of clients about this, and I said, growth a lot of the time, it really sucks. Like people get so yeah, I'm going to grow. It's going to be great. I'm so motivated. Yeah. And then, oh, wow, this is really freaking uncomfortable. This is not fun. Like, yeah. No, Kirk, thank you for sharing. Dr. Kirk, thank you for sharing your incredible insights today. Unicorn says, by the way, Dr. Kirk has created the healthiest space on the internet. I'm so glad you're collaborating with him. So I think that's a reflection of how the audience sees you. So thank you so much for coming in. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast and, of course, on the YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed to Dr. Kirk's YouTube channel, get over there and do it. I'll pop the link in the description. Yeah, Kirk, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. If this conversation is indicative of what you talk about normally, it sounds like you're spreading a lot of positive and useful things to people.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I had a lot of fun today, and we're actually going to duck over onto your channel as well. So check out Dr. Kirk's channel for his interview with me. We will see you on the next episode of the podcast and see you on the next video very soon.